have to say this is so cool because I get to follow Courtney, who I looked up to as an upperclassman in high school. So how cool is that, right? Well, I'm going to tell you just right off the bat that I am by no means an expert on what I'm going to talk about. I am just more of a success story, so we'll say that. And I can't even figure out how to move this. So other way, thank you. Again, not an expert, right? So I'm going to speak today about your personal brand and how you can take your job responsibilities and potentially try to implement your personal brand into those. So finding the sweet spot. You're going to hear me talk a lot about my story. I'm a big believer that we learn from each other's stories, and we can take those and we can transfer those into our own experiences. So although this is about my story, it could be about your future story. So a little bit of a background. About a year and a half ago, I had no idea what a personal brand was. No idea. But I got to go to a session that was led by two Temple members, Denise Thomas and Emily Phillips, if you all know them. Two people who just completely live their personal brands. And Donna Rico, who is a fashion designer. And as they're talking about their personal brand, things are just clicking for the next hour. I realized that I had some unique passions, competencies, and values that I didn't even realize meant my personal brand. So prior to my 5 years that I've been at Wisconsin State Fair, I was a teacher. And so I made a pretty big job leap. I come from a long line of teachers. My parents, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, all teachers, all music teachers. I rebelled. I decided to be a health teacher and teach high schoolers about the birds and the bees. But as I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, there is one question that's just burned in my mind that I need to ask. And that is, what happens if your current job responsibilities don't completely reflect your personal brand, right? So I went up to Emily Phillips at the end. I got one word out and I lost it, right? And I knew that was just pent-up passion coming out. And while I was trying to keep all of this in check, right, I do remember she did say, you need to assess and you need to have a conversation if this is how you are feeling. So I took the next weekend and I really thought things through. And if you haven't thought about your personal brand, it can be an emotional thing. And it can be a real deep dig into who you are, right? So after deciding that I have solid ground that I can run with here, I went back on Monday and I started what I call the here and the how, all right? My first step was taking a look at my job responsibilities and thinking, how can I interpret this to go to a more educational mindset? Now, my job as commercial vendor manager, very sales driven, very relations driven, and very operational driven. So again, that educational aspect, how can I make that fit into what I'm already doing? So I took a look at my job description and picked out some keywords. And I realized training, which I do year round, is actually teaching, right? So how can I alter my trainings to be more educational, looking at objectives and standards and things like that are gonna make my employees a little bit more successful. I manage an intern. Why not look at this as a mentorship, okay? Marketing, I go out to different events all the time and try to get vendors to come to our fair. That's really outreach. Again, another thing I'm really familiar with. And the hardest one that I had to learn making that leap, sales, right? And if I can sell safety to high schoolers, right? I'm pretty sure I can motivate in a couple different ways. So I started looking at it as motivation. Now, the hard part after this, I still wasn't fulfilled. And I love my job, don't get me wrong. I pinch myself every day that I get to work at the Wisconsin State Fair. But I knew that there was some other impact I could make. So, the conversation. First thing I did, I looked at our leadership and I said, who can I go talk to that I know is going to be open to my ideas? So I picked that person and asked for a meeting. And I said, I've got some ideas. I think we can make a big impact. And I made a proposal. And I said, here's what I have to offer. I'm great at educating. I'm great at getting kids excited. I would love to go into a classroom and teach them about the fair and teach them about the history. Here are the benefits. We're gonna get people excited and they're gonna wanna come to the fair, right? And cost to the organization. This was the hardest one. I made 2 proposals, multiple options. 5% of my job towards educational outreach, or a full-time position in educational outreach. And then my last thing I said was, how can I help? And I'm gonna point to this one, give it time, all right? I went into this person, kind of blew their mind a little bit, right? And I had to give them time. She said, I think we can make this happen, I just don't know quite how yet. So I asked boldly, and I went for it. I'm proud to say 5% of my job is now educational and community outreach. Woo, right? But it's been amazing, and I've seen such growth, and even people, other staff members in our building are now going out and doing outreach as well because of this. So really big things. I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to live my personal brand today by giving me a teaching platform. And any questions?